You were listening to the Reformanda Initiative podcast, where we analyze and discuss Roman Catholic theology and practice from an evangelical perspective. My name is Clay Kennard. I'm one of your co-hosts, and I'm sitting here in the city center of Rome, Italy, with my brothers and colleagues, Reed Carr and Dr. Leonardo De Chirico. Gentlemen, how are you doing?
Well, thank you.
Yeah, great, Clay. Thanks, Clay.
Yeah. Good. Well, I'm excited that we've got this new podcast episode. It's a topic that is very near and dear to some of the work that I've done with the Reformanda Initiative. And Reed thought that it would be important for us to talk about Leo's up-and-coming Vatican file. Why is that, Reed?
Well, the idea for it came from some of our listeners, which we're always grateful for. They're particularly friends of Leonardo's, who asked us to do an episode on this particular conversion of an evangelical, an Anglican evangelical from Anglicanism to Roman Catholicism. So we always love to do episodes that come from our listeners and their feedback and the questions that they have. But yeah, it is based on the upcoming Vatican file that Leo recently wrote, and those come out on December 1st. And the title of this Vatican file, which is also the title of this episode, is The Latest Evangelical Convert to Rome, subtitle being, What Does Rome Have to Offer for this particular convert? And it has to do with the Anglican Michael Nazir Ali. Now, Leo, you say in your opening words of your article that you're not English, no. You're not Anglican. No. You probably didn't know this individual.
Not in person.
Not in person. But it is important, and it is significant for all of us and all for the evangelical community to understand what is going on in this process of converting from evangelicalism to Roman Catholicism. Clay, as you said, you've looked into this yourself as you've written and studied on this and presented on it as well. But Leo, tell us a little bit first about who this individual is. Again, he was an Anglican bishop. Michael Nazir Ali, who is he?
Yeah. Those of our who are familiar with the Anglican scene or the British context, they would immediately recognize the name as one of the prominent former evangelical voices in public issues such as the relationship with Islam, dialogue with other faiths, the preservation of the Christian heritage of Britain and Western culture. He has been very involved in these discussions and becoming one of the more recognized voices in the British context, and being recognized as an evangelical Anglican or Anglican evangelical. So, but the evangelical part of it being very strong and very prominent. So the story of his conversion to Rome has had a number of articles in British and international newspapers and blogs, and has been a source of people asking questions and having doubts and trying to understand why a prominent evangelical Anglican would turn to Rome today.
Right. And you say, rightly so, that conversions of this type, transitions of this type, certainly have personal motivations that only really the Lord knows about, so it's not our job, and it would be a waste of time to speculate on why that may be. But what is possible and is important and necessary is to reflect on the public and theological issues that are involved in this conversion. And you began early in your article with a quote from the evangelical theologian Os Guinness, which is helpful in taking that first step in understanding the issues that are involved. And I'll just read it real quick. In an interview, Os Guinness said, "Institutionally, the switch, of course, from evangelical or Anglicanism to Roman Catholicism, it makes sense. Rome is a far more prestigious liner to sail in than the battered bark of Lambeth. Now, I had to look really quick in what he was referring to, and you actually make a couple of references to Lambeth in the article. So I don't know if you already knew or you had to look up yourself, but Lambeth is kind of a pier on the Thames River in London. It's at the Lambeth Bridge, where apparently, I'm not familiar with it, but maybe
Palace.
battered.
Yeah, the Lambeth Palace, where is one of the most prestigious sees of the Anglican Church. Anglican Church.
Okay.
So it's where the Lambeth Conference every 10 years they have this gathering of bishops. So it's a symbol referring to the Anglican Church.
Okay.
If we're talking about Rome or the Vatican, Lambeth is the equivalent with many caveats of what the Vatican, St. Peter's is for the Catholic Church.
So it's a reference to the Anglican Church and Anglicanism.
Yeah.
Okay. So it says Rome is a far more prestigious liner to sail in than the battered bark of Lambeth. However, in terms of the gospel itself, the switch makes no sense. And I hate to think that ecclesiastical factors outweighed theological factors at the end of the day. And again, the humblest West African church in the land, still faithful to the gospel, would have been a better destination. You also referenced a quote by the Reverend Roger Salter that added further food for thought. He said, "How can Rome be the home for any authentic adherent of the Augustinian 16th century Reformation, where the doctrine of grace regained its bold and beautiful clarity? Rome is as deeply divided as Anglicanism between the progressives and the Orthodox. And the present Pope not only betrays his own persecuted church, in China, for example, but embraces a range of heresies, including universalism." So you set the table for your discussion with these quotes. And so help us understand the concerns that are raised with this conversion of an individual who is a prominent individual in the Anglican evangelical world, but many of our listeners may have never heard of, and quite frankly, are not interested in. But why is that? Why is that this important and significant for us all?
Well, there have been many stories of conversion from the Anglican Church, the evangelical wing of the Anglican Church, to Roman Catholicism. And I think years ago we talked about John Henry Newman back in the 19th century as being one of the most prominent theologians of his day, and especially surely a seminal voice leading to Vatican II and shaping present-day Roman Catholicism. And there have been others in the 20th century. So that story is something of a repeated one in that respect. But Bishop Nazir Ali was a very vocal in expressing concerns over the Anglican Church's relaxation in terms of moral standards and doctrinal purity, and also became very concerned with the lowering of the spiritual awareness of the threats of a rampant Islam in Britain, wanting to take over, wanting to gain territory, so to speak, and seeing the Church of England practicing this embracing, welcoming, undiscerning attitude made him feel uncomfortable, to the point of seeing the Catholic Church being more reliable, stable, authoritative, traditional voice of Christianity, that where he could have found support, refuge, and a home, a spiritual home. And so this, creates a number of questions about not only his analysis of the Anglican Church. I don't think we are experts on that. We don't have much to say about it, if not what the public opinion can know, and of course the downgrading journey of much of the Anglican Church in terms of its watering down of doctrinal standards and even moral standards. And but in order to find in Rome a better place, that is what makes us think and question the whole transition. Because, as I try to point out in my article, certainly what is at work here is an idealized view of Rome, as if Rome were this very safe, authoritative, integral, stable, and reliable place where Christian orthodoxy and morality find their home. But this is a very idealized view of Rome, because Rome is not that place, is not what appears to be, at least in Bishop Nazir Ali's eyes. Rome is very divided. Rome is as corrupted as sectors of the Anglican Church. Rome is the place where the very points that Bishop Nazir Ali raises against the Anglican Church are points that have been welcomed and endorsed and also practiced and developed. And so, for instance, the attitude towards Islam, this is one of the concerns of Bishop Nazir Ali with regards to the Church of England. This is exactly where the Church of Rome has been going since the Vatican II. The consideration of Islam as a positive dialogue partner, and even more so, a religion with whom Catholic Christians can pray with, because as Vatican II says, Lumen Gentium 16, the Muslims, along with us, adore the one and merciful God. So Vatican II recognized that Islam teaches how to pray, and prays to God, the same God. And this is a massive statement regarding the nature of Islam, and ultimately resulting in recognizing Islam as a legitimate, biblically legitimate religion. And that is not only, this is not only what Vatican II says, but John Paul II, building on that, he convened in Assisi back in the 80s, the first interfaith prayer meeting, asking Muslims as well as Hindus, Buddhists, and others to join in prayer. So building on that foundation, Vatican II foundation. And Pope Francis, even more so, having gone to the point of considering Muslims brothers and sisters, so calling them to pray not only with him, but also to pray for him, as he did many times when visited by Muslim groups, and asking them to pray for him, not only to pray with him. So massive implications there with regards to the way in which Rome considers Islam as not only a religion, but as a partner, as a sister religion, and ultimately Muslim people as brothers and sisters. And I think we have had some episodes dealing with recent initiatives by Pope Francis back in Iraq months ago, and other, Pope Francis calling atheists people who are saved. We had this episode with the Pope saying that an atheist father was in heaven, talking to his child and responding to his cries and saying, no, your father was a good person, and because he was a good person, although he was an atheist, he is now in heaven. So this is the theology of the Church of Rome, and which is not better than the theology of the mainstream Anglican Church. And so for Bishop Nazir Ali to think that Rome is a more stable, orthodox, biblical home is the result of having fallen prey of an idealized view of Rome. Rome is not what appears to Bishop Nazir Ali to be. It is as divided and confused and contradictory, if not as wrong, as the Church of England on those very issues.
Well, you along that line, you raised this question in your article, saying, the question is whether or not Bishop Nazir Ali is aware of the evolutions of Roman Catholicism especially under the papacy of Francis, a papacy that stems from Vatican II theology.
Yeah.
It's the fullest expression of it, as we've said. I mean, he's an extremely intelligent person. So what could possibly be the draw to Rome, in your opinion? And without speculating on the personal issues that, again, like you said, only the Lord really knows in the end, but someone who's very intelligent, studies theology, would be aware of Vatican II theology. Of course, the issues in the Anglican Church that are replicated in many ways in the Roman Catholic Church. What could possibly be the draw?
I think two things. One is the result of what happened in the 80s and 90s when the Anglican Church decided to ordain women in the priesthood, and there was a stream of Anglican priests crossing the Tiber, so to speak, because they would not agree with the ordination of women to the priesthood. And that has put in the background of many Anglican British priests the idea that Rome is more traditional, not ordaining women to the priesthood, let alone to become bishop, as the Anglican Church eventually ended to. It implied in many people's minds that the Church of Rome is the conservative end of Christendom or Christianity because of that ordination issue that is rejected by the Church of Rome. And then secondly, I think in the background there is not so much John Paul II, but Pope Benedict Ratzinger. In 2008 and 9, he provided for Anglicans to be welcomed into the priesthood of the Catholic Church. For those who were dissatisfied with trends in the Anglican Church, he made the provision for them to be recognized, their orders to be recognized in the Catholic Church. Even though they were married priests or they could have been recognized in the Catholic Church, not to the status of bishops, but to the status of presbyter, priest, regular priest. And this has also contributed to the idea that the Catholic Church is welcoming those who are dissatisfied with liberal trends in the Anglican Church. But these two elements need to be put in the wider context of the dynamics of the Roman Catholic Church, which is not only conservative on the ordination of women, but is also very progressive on other issues which are contrary to traditional Christianity. And then also Pope Ratzinger was followed by Pope Francis. So Rome moved from Benedict, and so it is a moving reality rather than a stable, static reality. But certainly for people who are concerned with negative trends in the Anglican Church. What Ratzinger designed has become a way to attract people from the Anglican Church. So I think these two elements need to be taken into consideration to explain why an intelligent, informed, and clever, sharp man like Bishop Nazir Ali was indeed attracted to Rome to the point of becoming Roman Catholic, and as far as we know, being accepted as a priest, not as a bishop. He is losing the bishopry because he's married. But and that is something that even what Benedict provided for did not include. But as far as the priesthood is concerned, he can transfer his ordination to the Catholic Church recognizes the order that he had received from the Anglican Church.
Well, this problem that you highlight in your article of an idealized view of Rome is extremely pertinent, not only for Bishop Nadir Ali, but for many people or anyone who converts from Protestantism or evangelicalism to Roman Catholicism, because it is a idealized view. What's lurking below the surface is this expression of Vatican II theology that is on full display with Pope Francis, that then has tremendous theological implications. You discussed soteriological implications, what it means to be saved, who is saved, missiological implications, especially Pope Francis's universalism that is on full display without being defined in those terms. So it is certainly a huge danger and needs to be pointed out. You also point out a second danger, and that is the risk of going from bad to worse. Explain to us what that means exactly, what you are implying.
Yeah, Bishop Nazir Ali used to be associated with the evangelical wing, the Protestant wing of the Anglican Church, very strong on the foundational tenets of the biblical gospel as it was recovered at the Protestant Reformation. Scripture alone, Christ alone, faith alone, these solas that are so foundational to the right understanding and practice of the gospel. And for those reasons alone, Rome can never be an alternative, because Rome has never embraced the biblical gospel as it is defined by these five solas, Christ alone, Scripture alone, grace alone, faith alone, to God alone be the glory. Rome has never embraced. Actually, it has fought against those pillars of the biblical gospel. And so to leave the Anglican Church to embrace Rome out of the doctrinal concerns and embracing an institution that has been historically consistent in rejecting the gospel is not a good move forward. It is actually a very bad and even worse move than staying in the Anglican Church. I'm not in the position of saying if the Anglican Church is the best place for a Bible believer, regenerated person to find himself in. I am not in that position, but certainly Rome is far worse. Is far worse because officially, dogmatically, historically, institutionally, it has not only resisted but rejected the tenets of the Protestant Reformation. And even the recent ecumenical agreements, such as the 1999 Joint Declaration on the Doctrine of Justification by Faith. I think we have an episode or a couple of them on this very topic. This document is a classical, typical ecumenical text saying something and contradicting the following line, what was said before. So using a kind of language that sounds like a Protestant reading of justification, followed by the restatement of the traditional doctrine of the Council of Trent, which rejected the Protestant reading. And so, by juxtaposing, putting together things that are contradictory, it opens up a kind of confused text, blurred text, that is not the affirmation of the biblical gospel, but is the collection of bits and pieces from different places, in the end reaffirming the overall Roman Catholic reading of justification that is still considered as a process initiated by grace, but also in need to be implemented by merits and good works. So even the recent ecumenical documents signed by the Catholic Church, they do indicate that the resistance and the rejection of the Reformation is still part of the deep identity of the Catholic Church. And to swim the Tiber in order to go to Rome, to out of concerns for the mistakes of the Anglican Church, is actually a move that goes from bad to worse.
This is yet another comment that is not only applicable to Nazir Ali, but to all evangelicals. And as we know, and as Clay has highlighted in other episodes and articles that he's written, why Protestants cross the Tiber, as we say, or convert from Protestantism or evangelicalism to Roman Catholicism. It's a situation of going from bad to worse. Is the evangelical church perfect? No way, far from it. And that's why I say bad. There's a lot of bad in it, and that needs to be continued to be reformed by the gospel and Scripture. But Scripture alone is the authority for that reformation. And if you want to go from bad to worse, that's what happens in a conversion to Roman Catholicism, because you have a totally different gospel that is represented there, a gospel that is based on salvation by grace and works, which changes the nature of the gospel completely, and a whole myriad of other theological aspects that are worse than an evangelical expression of it. So it is definitely a situation of going bad to worst. And as you say here, you said, as an evangelical bishop, Nazir Ali should have had enough spiritual awareness to see what is at stake with Roman Catholicism from a doctrinal and theological point of view. Yeah. Again, it's not bad to worse because Roman Catholics are bad people. Far from it. The issue at stake here is the Roman Catholic theology and the doctrine that it represents. And he should have known better, especially his caliber, the caliber he is as a theologian. But it's a good warning to anyone who may be considering that.
Well, how do you, Clay? You have studied many stories of conversion. What is your feeling about it? Listening to what happened to Bishop Nazir Ali.
I think you've basically addressed it in this article and in this episode so far, and that's that there are false assumptions.
Yeah.
He thinks that the grass is greener on the other side, and he thinks that whether it's the unity of the church, the history of the church, maybe that's where he's going to be able to find comfort and solidarity and stability. And maybe this is just another example of why the Reformation Initiative's work is so important in helping even someone like Nazir Ali to understand Roman Catholicism in a systemic way, a systemic approach to Roman Catholicism. Because if he's just nitpicking or separating various isolated doctrines, if he's approaching it in an animistic way, he might have said, okay, well, the pros outweigh the cons. But still, as you've already said and as you confirmed read a moment ago. There's just there seems to be a lack of really understanding what he's getting into. And we've seen this in other converts. There was one in the article that I wrote based off of a book review where a Roman Catholic, a former evangelical that converted to Roman Catholicism, came to Rome. She's a journalist and covered a synod on the family or something. And she had a crisis of faith because in that moment she realized that there were disagreements, that there were conservative values or progressive values regarding the family that were at war with one another in Roman Catholicism. Yeah. So he's either going to have to compromise the evangelical convictions completely that he used to hold, that seemed to be kind of the root on his decision to convert to Roman Catholicism, or he's going to have a really rude awakening, I think, in the future.
Yeah, it continues to strike me this this level of a theologian being persuaded by this idealized view of Rome, and the theological and doctrinal differences that surely he's aware of. If you hold to evangelical convictions, the gospel that was rediscovered during the Protestant Reformation and that is summarized by the five solas. And to know that those have been rejected and they continue to be, or maybe there's a perception that there is common ground again. But it's definitely a warning to us all to be well grounded in our doctrine and our understanding of Scripture and Scripture alone as authority. When someone of this caliber can be led to the other side of the Tiber.
I like the way that you concluded this article, Leo. You said, ours is not the time to cross the Tiber. On the other side of the river, the reality is different from what it appears to be, and, even more importantly, it is flawed in terms of its basic commitments. Ours is the time to continue to uphold the biblical gospel of Jesus Christ. I don't know if Lambeth is the best place for a believer to find his spiritual home, but certainly Rome is worse.
As far as we know, he hasn't come out with any interviews yet, the bishop, to explain his conversion or...
Yeah. He has explained it, a couple of interviews, and even in a statement that he made, and basically expressing growing concerns for the diluting of the commitments and practices of the Anglican Church, and his growing concerns that had not been matched with significant attention and by the Anglican Church. So,
but still, affirmations of the alarming fact that he thinks that will be corrected in Roman Catholicism, and as you well said, going from perhaps bad to worse. Not perhaps, but most certainly. But any final comments or thoughts?
No, I think he's also made a point or inferred that for him the GDJ, the Joint Declaration,
JDDJ,
was a significant document that, in his understanding, changed the game with Rome, and Rome finally coming closer, if not embracing the doctrines of grace. But as I said, there are a couple of episodes we have addressed it with Michael Reeves, and also in another episode that these episodes show that this is more of a wishful thinking. Mm-hmm. It is a intelligently crafted document in ecumenical theology, inserting bits and pieces here and there, but the framework and the overall result is in line with the Council of Trent, not in line with the Reformation.
You actually address this in a couple of paragraphs in your recent book, Same Words, Different Worlds, and highlight the fact that it's ultimately, too, it's all based in the sacramental system of Roman Catholicism, which completely redefines it from an evangelical perspective.
Yeah, perhaps we should send to Bishop Zira Lee a copy of my book. So just as a present from Rome to him.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
And everyone else should think of a loved one that would benefit from that book as well, considering that the holidays are coming up, and head over to ivpbooks.com or amazon.com and purchase that book and send it as a gift.
Anything else, guys?
Nope. All right. Well, as usual, please visit our website at reformandainitiative.org, where you'll find lots of resources and information on our podcast, on our conferences, on our up-and-coming Rome Scholars and Leaders Network that will take place in June. Share this podcast. If you haven't subscribed to it, go ahead and do that. Give us a good rating. Leave a good comment as well. That'll help our podcast get in front of other people's eyes. Follow us on Facebook at Reformanda Initiative and on Twitter at Reformanda Rome. So if there's nothing else, I guess until next time from Rome, God bless.